Recording in progress. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, Ann McDonough with the Vineyard Haven Public Library. And tonight we welcome Island dog trainer Brian Luce, who's going to talk to us about the psychology of dog training. I'm not going to give more of an introduction than that, as I think Brian's going to tell us a little bit about how he got into dog training and how successful he has been at it. So take it away, Brian.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my name is Brian. I'm a dog trainer here on Martha's Vineyard. Some of you guys probably know me. Some of you may have worked with me before or seen videos that I've done. But yeah, I've been training dogs professionally. I think I'm going on my 4th or 5th year. I've been running my own business for, I think this is my 4th year. So a little bit of time now, but I'm doing it every day, 7 days a week, pretty much since I became interested in it. So before that, I worked in daycares. I walked dogs. I did stuff with shelters, things like that. So pretty much just been with dogs every day.
I can't hear you.
Learning from them. Can't hear me?
Oops.
Let me know when you can. Okay. And there's by the way, too, there's a chat bar. I don't know if you guys know how to get to it, but that is an easy way to communicate with me too. So if you can't hear me, something's happening, post over on the right side in the chat bar. I'm not going to go over how to get it loaded up, but anyways, so that's my story. I've been running the business for a few years now, and I wanted to talk today about primarily training tools, but a lot of just the psychology behind people's perceptions, the way dogs learn. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about why dogs pull and why dogs do certain things, and the way that we use leashes, the way that we see leashes, and the way most of us are doing it wrong. And the reason I wanted to put the emphasis on the psychology part is because a lot of it is just, it's what we think about it up here. So the way we see something, the way we think dogs should react to something. So today, my goal is just hopefully to help clear some things up with everything I listed above. So anyways, might as well go ahead and just get started. So when it comes to leashes and it comes to collars and it comes to just dogs in general, we really have to look at how are we communicating with them. And so before I get started with any of the tools, what I want to talk about first are two things. It's physical pressure and the release of the pressure. And I want to talk about something called opposition reflex. And so let's start with physical pressure. So all leashes and collars are applying physical pressure. All right. Doesn't matter what it is you're using, a harness, halty, flat collar, slip leash, prong collar. It's all physical pressure. And there's a reason that we use physical pressure with dogs, and that's because it works, and it has worked for as long as we've been domesticating dogs. So with physical pressure, we have to look at what are we trying to convey to the dog? Are we trying to get them to stop doing something, to do something, to follow us, to not chase after animals, to not bite other dogs, to not jump on people? So we use leashes for a reason, and mainly it's because dogs don't speak English. So a lot of times I see people out in the real world, their dog is out of control, jumping on people or, running around like crazy, and they're telling it, no, stop, no, stop, no, stop, but they're holding the leash, not using it. Or on the other hand, what you see a lot too is people overusing it. So their dog goes to, let's say, go up to go smell a kid that's walking by, and they lift it up like this, or they don't want their dog to pull towards another dog or a person, and they overcompensate using the leash too much. And so what I'm hoping to help clear up today is just making us become aware of how we're using it and why we're using it. So it's really just nonverbal communication to communicate to a nonverbal creature, because as I mentioned before, dogs unfortunately don't speak English. So we use pressure to get our dog's attention. We keep it tight, until they're doing the thing that we want them to be doing. So if I want my dog to stop pulling, for example, most people are going to tighten it up. When the dog starts pulling, they release it. And so that right there is communication. So you are telling that dog something. You're saying, hey, when this leash goes tight, I need you to do something. And so what I want to go over in more detail is how we can actually use that better and how we can use that to our advantage. So the next thing to talk about is opposition reflex. And so I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to give you the scientific terms for it. I'm just going to give you my personal experience with it in my everyday use of training dogs. So opposition reflex to me is a natural response in dogs. And the reason why dogs will oppose, as in the word opposition reflex, is because they feel like they're being pulled off balance. So if we, let's say, put a leash on a dog and we pull them back, a lot of dogs will lean into it because they feel they don't know what's going to happen. They think they might get lifted up and taken away. So it's a survival instinct that they have to go, ooh, something's trying to bring me away. I need to pull against it. And this right here is pretty much the primary reason why dogs pull. So the more times dogs pull on the collar, the more we pull back, the more we actually create opposition. So if a dog starts to pull and we yank on them, they want to keep moving away. So what do? We pull harder. And then the dog just gets stronger and they dig their nails in the ground. And then they learn to predict that behavior. They will begin to feel pressure and go, oh, I know what's going to happen. Me and my owner are about to fight. So let me get prepared for it. And that's why, and I'll show you in just a moment, why dogs a lot of times will lower themselves like this and they get down real low and will actually immediately go into pulling you as soon as they feel pressure. And so I'm going to share my screen here to give you guys a couple just visuals of what I'm talking about. So let's see, hopefully you guys can see this. So here we have 3 dogs, but I guess primarily focusing on these 2. And so both on flat collars, actually this one's on a martingale, but this one right here, if you can see my mouse, the dog on the left, is on a flat collar, which is what most dogs wear. So you can see the leash is completely tight here, like so pressure is being applied, but look at the way the dog is. You see how her body is completely lowered to the ground. It's flat right here, and all the body is leaning into it. And so this is really common with a lot of dogs, or almost all dogs that pull, whether it be a harness, a flat collar, whatever. If you look at this adorable Rottweiler over here, same thing. Look at how he or she is trying to lower their body to the ground. You see how the head is focused down? See how the nails are curling over here? So, and then in this little dog too, you can see the same thing. So they're almost like digging their paws into the ground to get a better grip to pull away from us. So that right there is opposition reflex. Dogs will pull away from pressure rather than with it. And so, sorry, my dog made a weird noise. So training tools in general were designed to change this, right? Because we've figured out that, hey, some collars don't work with dogs. Some harnesses don't work with dogs. Some things just don't work. And so whether it's people's lack of knowledge on how dogs actually respond to pressure, or the fact that it's the wrong tool for the wrong dog, it doesn't matter. If we start seeing this opposition, you're only going to start seeing more of it. But the cool thing about opposition is we can actually use it to our advantage. And I'm going to go over that further on in the presentation. But the one thing to keep in mind with opposition reflex is if a dog is pulling, so let's say this is their ears, the top of their head. If we pull straight back along the spine, it's going to cause him to go forward even more. That's the opposition right there. It's like pulling a bow back, for example. So the harder back I go, the more pressure is being applied. But if I have the leash here and it's attached to the dog right here, and I go even just a couple degrees to the right or a couple degrees to the left, what's going to happen is the dog is going to turn around. And so that is all I'm looking for when I'm working with the dog. So for most dogs, when they're pulling and they're engaging in that opposition, if you just take one step to the right or one step to the left, you'll notice the dog will actually start to turn. And if you follow through with that, they'll turn all the way back around. And now we can actually use that opposition to create what we want. So if my dog is pulling and I want to tell him to stop pulling, he's not going to know that by yanking on the leash. But if he pulls and I turn him around, he goes, oh, you wanted something. Like, this pressure actually means something. So it's just something to think about. When it doesn't matter what you walk your dog on, it's the same for everything. So the last thing I wanted to talk about with opposition reflex is I hear a lot that if my dog stopped pulling, they wouldn't choke. So let's say dog's walking on a flat collar and they're going like that. People tell me all the time, well, doesn't he not like that? Like, why doesn't he stop pulling? And so to me, the obvious answer is, well, first, he's a dog. He doesn't have any awareness of the fact that, he has control over this. But really, it's because of the opposition. That natural instinct kicked in of, oh, something's tightening here. I got to pull away from it. And so if we keep walking with the dog, so if our dog is pulling and we're holding the leash out and we keep walking, it's working. They're going, oh, I can get a couple seconds of breathing by pulling away from it. So if our dog starts to pull and you keep walking forward with them, you're essentially rewarding the walking. But most humans want to keep going for the walk. Well, if I stop, then I'm not going to get to the beach. If I stop, then I'm not going to get to around my block, or I'm not going to get a mile walk in. But what we're doing is we're sacrificing quality of our walk in order to try to get the dog to do something that's not capable of doing. So if you just stopped and turn the dog around, you wouldn't make it as far, but your walk would get a lot better and your dog wouldn't choke anymore. So opposition reflex, physical pressure are two key points with everything when it comes to dogs. So before I go into the various training tools that we can use with this, I want those two things to be understood by everybody. It's how dogs think. Okay, there's nothing we can do to break it. They're naturally born doing these things. So are we going to expect them to figure out what we want, or are we going to go down to their level? You see? So if I want my dog to stop pulling, but I'm not doing anything to change it, it's not the dog's fault. It's our fault. So we cannot have any expectation on a dog to do something that they've never been taught how to do. So anyways, let's go over our first tool. And so this is going to be something called the slip leash. So I'm just going to get these loaded up here, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Okay, so let me X out of the dogs here, and I hope you guys can see this. So slip leash is my personal favorite. It's a great tool for introducing the idea of pressure, concept of pressure, whatever you want to call it. And so if you can see this blue leash here, it's not a choke leash, as I've heard a lot, or a choker. A lot of people will call it that. It's called the slip leash. That's the actual name for it. But essentially, the idea behind a slip leash is that really they can't slip out of it. So it works kind of like I'd say like for lack of a better term, like a Chinese finger trap. So if it's properly fit with the dog, and you can see here, I have like this little thing loaded up. So goes around the dog's neck, tighten the leather strap here and here all the way down. And so if a dog goes to back out of it, the pressure will engage here. So if they go to pull ahead, pressure engages. They go to pull to the side, pressure engages, and so on and so forth. So as long as this leather strap is pushed down and the loop is not loose, it's meant to be tight for a reason, then it'll work properly. So I'm gonna stop sharing here. So with that, a dog can still pull, a dog can still choke themselves, but what it does give you versus a standard flat collar, most importantly, is that they can't back out of it. I'm sure at some point in your life, you've probably seen a dog slip out of a collar and off they go, or a harness or something else. So to me, that's the biggest reason why you should use a slip leash. The other reason too is that unlike a flat collar, where let's say it can be like this wide, so when it's applying pressure, it's distributing it over a wider area, therefore making it more comfortable for the dog to pull. And secondly, with the flat collar, unlike a slip leash, it only puts pressure on one side of the neck. So the dog could really lean into it. A slip leash will tighten up evenly around the neck. And the reason why we want that is so we can actually use less pressure. So if the goal is to turn a dog's head around, not pop them and correct them or pull them back if they're pulling, but just to turn the head, something that tightens around not the right here or right here on the very top, right under the dog's ears. As soon as they feel pressure, it's just going to turn their head around. But the closer down to the chest it goes, the more they can lean into it. So if my goal with any leash is just to turn the body around to communicate, to stop going that way, come this way, then with the slip leash, I can do that much more gentler and much easier. So it's amazing the difference that I see when I go to do a consultation and people have a like gigantic loose flat collar that's hanging here and they're yanking the dog back, and I put the slip leash on, get it properly fit, and I use two little fingers just to move the dog's head to the side, and they go, okay, and they follow me. It's not because I'm doing anything special. It's because they feel the pressure and go, oh, this makes more sense, because that's literally how dogs are designed to be. Oh, something's bringing me this way, not straight back. Let me move with it now. So reason slip leashes can be good as well, and they're why they're used a lot in, let's say, like rescues and things, is they're great for nervous dogs, skittish dogs, flighty dogs. So if a dog goes to take off, for example, like I said, if they back out of a harness or they back out of a flat collar, good luck seeing that dog again. So you're doing a dog a disservice by actually using the wrong training tool. So let's say you look at a slip leash and you go, well, I don't want to choke my dog. That's going to choke him. I don't want to choke my dog. I'm going to use a flat collar. I'm going to use a harness because that's safe and it's not harmful for my dog. What happens if your dog backs out of both of those things and runs into traffic? What happens if he takes off and it's wintertime and it's cold out? So this isn't the case for every dog, but I've been doing this for a while and it has happened. I get calls all the time. Oh, my dog backed out of his collar at the dog park today and took off into the woods and has no recall and he's scared. So that is the biggest reason why you should use a slip leash, if nothing else. If you don't use any other training tool, if you just use a flat collar, get a slip leash, okay? So let me just make sure I got everything on my notes here. So the downsides of a slip leash, real quick too, because there's pros and cons to everything. Nothing is perfect. Is for large dogs like Mastiffs, German Shepherds, or maybe your intense dogs like dogs with aggression or reactivity, it is not recommended for that, especially if you don't have an idea on how to use your own body mechanics and leverage to your advantage. So meaning a dog can still drag you down with it on, that it will not automatically stop a dog from pulling like some other things might do. So it's recommended to use it mainly if you're introducing a dog. It's like if you're going to just do training, or if you have a dog that doesn't have overexcitement issues, like extreme pulling issues, reactivity, things like that, unless you have an idea on how to use it. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear that it will become more about physical strength in the end, and that's not what I want when I work with a dog. I don't care how big they are. If I can't use pretty much two fingers to walk them, I'm going to change the tool right away. So with that being said, let's move on to our next one. And so this is a fun topic to talk about. No, that's not the picture I want. So I'm going to get a couple pictures loaded up here. All right, let's start with one. So I'm going to share my screen again. Close out of here. All right, so we got this friendly dog over here. I assume it's friendly, looks nice. So this dog is in a harness. So harness is what most dogs wear, essentially. It's what's sold the most, it's what's marketed the most, and it's what I see most dogs wearing. And there's reasons for that, whether it's marketing, perception, usually it's not for utility, meaning that people don't understand why they're using the harness. They think that's just what they have to use. Very rarely is it actually for a medical issue due to some issue with the dog's neck, but a lot of times it's because people don't know how to use a collar or a leash, and so they go, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put a harness on my dog, and now look, they're comfortable pulling and they're having a good time and nobody's choking. But because of that, you're actually giving up a lot of control. So and before I go into this too, I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying to convince anybody to buy anything, to change any the way they're doing anything. What I'm doing is just providing factual information. Okay, I want this to be as non-biased as possible. Although a lot of this is coming from my personal experience in the many years I've been doing this, so I just want to make this clear before I continue going. Um, Anyway, so we have this dog here wearing a back clip harness. Obviously, clips on the back. But notice the posture of this dog. Does it look familiar? Because it looks like a dog that's going into opposition. Well, opposition reflex, but that is opposition. You see the body angling forward a lot like that. And it could just be because of the photo, but I've worked with enough dogs to see where this is heading. This dog is not going to back up as that leash tightens up. I'll bet money on that. So when we talk about opposition reflex, harnesses is literally designed, particularly backlip harnesses, to create that. That was essentially the whole, not the idea in mind. They didn't, people who created harnesses didn't go, yes, opposition reflex, we'll use it to our advantage. But they understood the purpose of it, you see? And the purpose of it is to essentially make it comfortable for dogs to pull. That's really what it comes down to. So a backlip harness does not offer any actual communication. So if we go back to pressure and release, right? And the whole goal of pressure and release is to communicate, right? What is the communication that's happening here? This is restraint, you see? So look at where the pressure is being applied. So they pull here. You see that little gap right there, right under where the harness is? So the pressure, no pressure is being applied right there. So what's happening is it's going to tighten up around the sides and possibly around the front too, but not so much. But a lot of that's happening right there. So that replicates if I went to grab a dog, for example. Let's say that dog didn't want to be grabbed. What are they going to do? They're going to try to run away. So anytime pressure is being applied here, it's going to cause the dog to want to go into opposition. And this is, and I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. This is not 100% of the time, okay? Every dog is different. They're dogs that you put a harness on, especially a back clip, they go, this is fine. I'm never going to pull you again. You can pull on the leash and I'll come with you and come walking with you. And that's fine. I'm not saying that this is 100% of the time, but majority of the time, yes. So with that being said, what is the communication that's being applied there? If that dog is pulling, how is pulling back on them when they have a back lip harness going to communicate, hey, I want you to stop doing this? Or let's say you want them to turn to the right and you take 5 steps to the right and you apply pressure. The pressure is not going to angle to the right. The pressure is still going to be on the back right there, causing the dog to want to go forward. So it doesn't matter which way you step. And so as I talked about with the collar and a leash, if you take 1 step to the right and pull on the dog's neck, the dog's not going to back up towards you. They're going to turn towards you to relieve the pressure. You see what I mean? You cannot achieve that with the back clip harness. So it becomes reliant on physical strength again. And so I'm not the strongest person in the world. And, I have lots of clients who are, physically have like wrist issues, arthritis, or maybe they're older and can't rely on physical strength. So it's unfair to them to be told that this tool, this harness is safer for your dog. And if you use a collar, you're bad. But when these people can't physically, they don't have the actual strength, even if they had treats and the knowledge of using everything to communicate, it still comes down to physical strength. What is stopping that dog from running towards the squirrel? Nothing. So I'm going to load up a couple more photos here. And this is going to be it's going to be a fun one. So let's see. So I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So I'm sure you probably heard this analogy before. Maybe not. I hear it a lot with amongst dog trainers, but so what are harnesses designed for? For pulling. What is the best way, or what is one of the most fun ways to utilize a dog pulling? Sled dogs. Okay. Look what these dogs are wearing. They're wearing, well, flat collars, but they're wearing harnesses, not front clip, back clip. So why would these dogs be wearing back clip harnesses versus a front clip harness or versus a flat collar or versus a slip leash or something like that? Because it's comfortable to pull, you see? So we want these dogs to pull, but even more so than that, what happens when that dog feels pressure being applied on the let's say coming from the leash, but on the back of their body? They want to pull against it. So sled dogs, and I'm not a sled dog trainer. I've never trained sled dogs. So if anybody here has, please give me input or correct me if there's anything I'm saying that's wrong. But if we put a sled dog into opposition, will that not cause that sled dog to run faster to try to get away from it? So utilizing opposition reflex, we can actually make these dogs run quicker because there's pressure being applied to them and they want to run away from the pressure. You see what I mean? So that is one way we can use it to our advantage. Now let's load up another photo here. So this is a police dog being trained, specifically, pretty sure it's a Belgian Malinois. Could be a Dutch Shepherd. I don't know. They're very similar. So this dog is having the time of his life, biting the bad guy. So look at what this dog is wearing as well too. That is a back clip harness. Okay. And so why would they be wearing a back clip harness as opposed to a prong collar, as opposed to a flat collar, as opposed to a martingale? Because we want it comfortable for them to pull. But in the case of police dog training, and once again, I'm not a police dog trainer at all, but I do have a very good understanding of the way dogs work. So with police dog training, they build frustration, okay? They want this dog to be so worked up trying to go after the toy, the bad guy, the bite sleeve, whatever it is, that when they finally get there, there's this giant release of just endorphins. Yes, I finally got this thing. So to build that frustration, what they do, I'm gonna stop sharing. What they do is they will hold, and I've seen this in person many, many times. The handler handling the dog will have the dog, and if, by the way, if anybody trains police dogs too, please feel free to chime in the chat as well. But they will get the dog on a harness, one hand behind the back, and they'll sit there. And somebody else, the decoy helper, will frustrate the dog. So they'll present them with, let's say, a toy, let's say with the bite sleeve, whatever they've been trained to want to get. And they will tease that dog and they'll back away. And the handler holds the dog, waiting for them to build and build and build and get frustrated so much that they want that. And then finally, they'll walk closer and either they'll let the dog go, so they'll release them to go and get it. Or in the case of mostly what I've seen, excuse me, they'll walk that dog up one step at a time. And each step it gets closer, it builds more and it builds more until finally they get the bite and they don't want to let go. They're tugging it around. So the reason that frustration was there is because of the harness. If they had a prong collar on the dog, as soon as it went to go pull, it'd go, I don't want that toy. No, I'm going to hang out over here. So you see what I mean with this? So the last thing to talk about too with the harness, or one of the last things, I guess, is look at dog reactivity. Okay. And so you walk past on the dog in your neighborhood and they see the dog first and they pull towards them. And then they once you get closer, they start really pulling and then they start getting aggressive and barking and freaking out. Usually that will happen. Let's say the barking and the aggression part will happen as soon as the pressure is applied. So in the case of a harness, look at what we just talked about with police dogs. And now take away the bite sleeve and put the dog on the side of the street. Oh, there's a dog. I like dogs. I want to go say hi to him. Oh, but there's something preventing me. Well, let me just pull harder into this. Oh, now my owner's pulling harder back. And so if that happens every time, they'll start to predict it and go, oh, there's a dog. Ooh, now I got to really pull and maybe be faster than my owner to get to this other dog. You see? So over time, that pattern is reinforced and created. And now the dog just goes right to reactivity. Goes, I'm not even going to try to fight my owner anymore. I know this is going to be a battle because I really want that dog and I'm getting frustrated. So I'm just going to go straight into reactivity. I'm not going to wait to try to go through all the motions. You see what I mean? So when we only have restraint and no control, all we're doing is building frustration. And so now the last thing I want to talk about with harnesses in general is, what are they good for then in terms of your average everyday pet dog? Because there are good uses for them. So I tell clients all the time, if you have a puppy, for example, or you have a dog that maybe has not so good recall, but you still want to go enjoy, let's say, a day at the beach with them or go on a hike with them, just slap on a harness, put a 20-foot long line on, go have a fun time with them. Because you're not caring about if they're pulling you or not. You're giving them their freedom. And so that is absolutely, in terms of a not a sled dog or a police dog perspective, the best way to use it. So, because you're not expecting anything from your dog, you're just saying, hey, like, let's go and have fun. And I don't want to turn this into a training session. I don't care what you do. You can go up, back, left, right, wherever you want to go. And I don't want to restrain you or yank on you or anything like that. That is the best way to use it. And in the case of puppies, puppy may not have a full understanding of the leash yet. So anyways, we got a little bit more to talk about here. Let's go into here's a good one. Let's go into the prong collar, guys. So I'm gonna load up some pictures again. I'm trying to run through this. Let's see, share my screen. Okay, prong collar is the scariest one. Ooh, the spike collar, the pinch collar, the whatever you want to call it. Well, most people have no idea how this thing is actually used. And I know some people in here can directly vouch for them and how awesome they actually are. So the biggest reason why prong collars are misunderstood is because nobody understands them. So people put them on, they'll put them on usually loose, hanging down the dog's neck. And then they think because maybe some dog trainer in the 1980s told them, you got to yank on the dog as hard as you can, that they're tools for corrections and corrections only, and they cause pain. It is so far from the truth. And anybody who believes that or thinks that is wrong. Despite what your opinion about it may be, emotions aside, it is wrong. Okay. So to go over quickly how the prong collar actually works. So you have here these little links, right? So or the little prongs, I should say. I'll use this image. So these are rounded at the ends and they are angled. So they are not spikes that dig into the dog, but rather wrap around the dog's neck, you see? And so by having two sets of it distributes the pressure evenly. And so this is also the reason why I prefer to use a small prong collar, for example, versus a big one. So the whole goal of a prong collar is even and gentle distribution of pressure. You see, it's not to cause pain. It's not to correct the dog. It's not to yank on him or anything like that. It's all communication. It doesn't matter what the tool is. So the whole way a prong collar works, you see this little bit right here, these two little links that I'm showing you between this circle and this thing right here. That is all a prong collar is doing, is this little bit. It's expanding and contracting. So the leash goes here on what's called the D ring. And then you have the O ring, which is your safety ring that prevents it from actually choking the dog, which is why it's actually one of the safest tools. But essentially, all we're looking for is expansion and contraction. And if it's properly fit, it's only going to be about 5 or 6 of these little links are just going to come in and out and in and out. And I have here, not very large, but where we want it to fit. So once again, like with everything else, right below the ears, not down towards the chest, because the closer to the chest it is, the stronger essentially a dog can pull against it. So back to the prong collar, and I'm going to stop sharing here. I love the prong collar, and I love it because it allows me to be gentle, okay? So my whole goal, as I mentioned before, is to be able to use 2 little fingers. Doesn't matter how big the dog is, doesn't matter how aggressive or intense it is. And I will get there with every dog that I work with. Okay. So with 2 little fingers, just to be able to turn the dog's head to the right or to the left. And so if a slip leash is not working with the dog, as it doesn't with every dog, if a martingale does not work with the dog, then I'll usually go into a prong collar next. And this does not mean I will do it forever. Okay. And so that's usually the first thing people ask. Well, when can I take it off my dog? When they're ready, when they have an understanding of pressure, okay, in the physical pressure specifically, but when they have an understanding of when I tighten up the leash, there's something I want you to do. So if I just slap a prong collar on the dog and I go for a walk, let them pull me, they'll still pull. Doesn't matter, prong or not. It's not going to stop it. But if I use it to communicate, hey, when this thing goes tight, I need you to maybe move a couple steps to the right or stop or move a couple steps to the left or come closer to me or stay on this side or stay on this side. You see what I mean? So if you have a clear goal in mind of what you want it to be used for, it's an amazing tool. And so let me just make sure I'm going. I got all my notes here. But another thing with the prong collar too is I'm sure you guys have probably at some point seen the picture of the dog with all the holes in its neck. All right. And its prong collars are bad. And they'll write in big words and they'll share it on a Facebook meme and throw a cute picture of a dog and go, this is why you should use treats instead. And the reason why that is not an accurate photo is because that is a result of leaving it on a dog for like a month long. Okay. If you leave any collar on a dog for that long, it's going to dig into that. It's going to cause infections, even flat collars too. The bacteria will build up. But that is not the result of somebody using the prong collar. And dogs' necks are so strong that we don't give them enough credit. Okay. So they can be sensitive, absolutely. But that's mental up here too. And we will always be sensitive with the dog back if you're a good enough trainer. So if I'm working with a very sensitive dog, I may not need the prong collar at all. But physically speaking, a dog's neck is extremely tough. Many, 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 many times tougher than ours. Many times tougher. And so people will go, well, how do you feel if I put that around your neck? I'd go, well, if you used it properly, then we wouldn't be feeling it at all. Because the whole point of a prong collar is to not even have to use it. Okay. So the goal of a prong collar is that I can eliminate the options that my dog has. So they'll pull one way and go, okay, I'm going to lean into that. And they'll go and they'll pull another way. Okay, I'm going to lean into that. And when you take away that option, most dogs will go, all right, what's next? I can't go over there. Where can I go? So it actually helps calm dogs down. Okay, regardless of corrections or anything like that. When we eliminate the amount of escape a dog has, if it's the right dog, obviously this is all situational, they will go, okay, I can't go anywhere. I might as well just hang out. It's the same thing if you're creating a dog. They can try to escape if they want. And when they go, okay, well, I can't get out of here. I'm just going to go to bed. So anyways, let me just make sure I went over everything with this. And please, when you ask questions too, if you have any questions about anything that I might have missed about this, or if you're confused about it, please just feel free to ask it at the end. But yeah, I think I covered enough with that. Let's go into the next thing for time's sake. So I only have one photo for this one, but it's going to be a good one. So just make sure I have all this. Okay, so let's see, share screen. All right, cool. So here we have an e-collar, which is another touchy subject with a lot of people. And the whole point of this is people's perceptions, as I talked about in the beginning. People see things and they go, well, that's bad. And then anything you say doesn't go, they won't listen, okay? All they do is they see this and they go, it's bad. Okay, it shocks, it hurts, it causes pain, and I'll never cause pain to little Cooper, okay? And it doesn't matter how much you try to explain it, they have it hardwired in their head, you see? And so this is where perception comes in, the way we see things versus what's actually happening versus how the dog is perceiving it, okay? And so there's a lot of different communication happening. We think something is happening. The dog thinks something's happening. And both could be completely further from the truth, right? So if I, for example, if I go, oh my God, I have to put this e-collar on the dog. He's gonna be so sad. And I put the collar on. Oh, I have to press the button. The dog is, of course, gonna be like, well, something's wrong. You're wrong right now. So I don't like this thing because when this thing comes on, you are not right. And then that confirms, well, I put an e-collar on my dog and they were so scared. Well, okay, yeah, absolutely, because you were freaked out. So comes down to how we perceive things first, and that will influence the dog's perception. So let's go over the ins and outs of this real quick, right? So here you have your receiver, you have your your little prongs. I think that's what they're called, which by the way are not also spikes either. These are very small, and they just, if that's also why an e-collar needs to be tight around the neck. A lot of people keep them too loose because they need to be making contact at all times. Now you have your remote, and this thing can reach up to a mile. I think this one specifically is a half mile. And then you have your two buttons here, and this model will go up to level 100. Okay. So I use this exact model. My dogs work at, let's say, a level 5 to a 7 at most times. So that's not even a 1 out of 10. Okay. And I'm not using it to do anything more than just say, hey, I don't have a leash on you, but I need you to come back to me. Okay. So my dog, I don't know if you can see him right here. Let me move away a little bit. This is Jinx. All right. Jinx has a lot of prey drive. Okay. Meaning Jinx likes squirrels. He likes, well, mainly squirrels, chipmunks, things like that. And just because of that doesn't mean I can't, can't give him a good life. He's off leash all the time. He's having fun. The only way I was able to do that is because of an e-collar. All right. So without an e-collar, he would have to live a life on leash. Now he can live a life off leash. He doesn't chase after squirrels anymore. He doesn't chase after deer anymore. And that's not because I cranked it up to 100 and held it down. It's because I was able to communicate thousands of times when these scenarios came up. Hey, come back to me. Hey, come back to me. Hey, come back to me. So an e-collar is our way to communicate with the dog without actually having a leash on. And there's no other tool that can do that. So people will go, well, I train my dog with treats. And that's great. If your dog can come back 100% of the time on treats, that is amazing. And I want you to teach me how you did it. Okay. So most dogs are going to be prey driven first and then want the food and the treats and the praise and all that after. And that's because dogs are instinctual. So when we put emotion into it and go, oh, my dog loves treats and here's a treat. Come on, come back to me. Don't look at the squirrel. Don't look at the dog. Come back to me. You're trying to fight with instincts and you're never going to win. Okay. We're hoping the dog comes back to us when I'm holding a treat out and praying that my dog comes back to me, you see, or getting loud with my voice or yelling or going, come, come, come. And then I start getting intense to try to match it. So an e-collar is our way of just saying, hey, I want you to look at me. I want you to stop what you're doing. This can only be done through proper training, but there, excuse me, is no other tool that exists out there that can communicate to a dog physically without having a leash attached. Okay. So we can always be able to reach out and communicate when our voice won't work, when the treat won't work, when the training we may have done won't work. The e-collar will always mean the same thing. So, for example, a level 7 is always going to mean a level 7. Okay. And obviously, some dogs, if they're in a different state of prey drive, intensity, whatever, you may have to scale it up a little bit. But that level 7 will always mean the same thing. Doesn't matter how angry I am, doesn't matter how hard I smash the button or anything like that, doesn't matter how pissed I am, that level 7 will always be the same. It's neutral. And that's one of the greatest things about the e-collar. A leash, well, you cannot apply the same pressure twice. All right. It will always mean something different. So if you're angry, stop that. If you're scared of hurting your dog, you're going to do this. Okay. Is it working? If you're, let's say on your phone, you're just going to be doing this. You see what I mean? So if we train our dogs, let's say to respond to a low level stimulation to come back, when we apply that, it doesn't matter if we're staring at our phone. It doesn't matter if we're talking on our phone, we're looking at somewhere else. If I press that button, it's going to mean the same thing. And so this is actually one of the biggest reasons why an e-collar is great for nervous dogs and skittish dogs and scared dogs. And that's probably a very controversial subject to talk about. Well, how is shocking a dog supposed to be good for a scared dog? It's because there's no emotion involved in it. It's always going to mean the same thing every time, you see? And so if I have a very sensitive dog and I put it to a level 3 out of 100, and I press that button and he feels not a shock, a stimulation. I'm going to go into that in a minute. And we trained him to say, hey, let's say I press the button, turn the head, press the button, turn the head, press the button, turn the head with the leash. And eventually I press the button, the dog might turn their head on their own through what we call classical conditioning. So Pavlov's dogs, I'm sure you guys have probably heard that before. I'm not going to get into that right now either, but that's how we can train that dog to go, okay, e-collar means this. So when I have a nervous or scared dog, and let's say pressure is too much for that dog, if I use an e-collar that's been properly trained and I press that button, they'll go, okay, I know what this means. And they can win every single time. Whereas if I use a leash, maybe I'm a little too hard that time. And now we put them into opposition and they shrivel up. You see what I mean? So it's not utilized properly a lot of the time. The majority of what I see with it is people will go and wait for their dog to do something bad. And then they crank that collar up and they press the button. And all of a sudden the dog jumps and goes, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. Or they feel it and the owner provided them with no information. They just press the button and said no. And no doesn't mean anything. No what? No, do this instead. Nope, they just say no. So then the dog learns to be in a state of fear of it. And they learn to just kind of look around, okay, I don't want to make this thing go off. And that makes them afraid of it because they don't know why it's happening, you see? So if taught properly, most dogs, 95% of the dogs I've ever trained, I've trained a lot of dogs on it, operate on a very low level. I would say anywhere, highest being 15, lowest being level 3. So if you have used it before and your dog is only responding at a very high level, unless there's maybe extreme prey drive or anything like that, you're doing it wrong. There's no reason why it should be that high. So this is why things like e-collars should also not be sold off the shelves. I'm 100% against that. I don't believe they should be banned like a lot of people think they should be, but they should not be sold to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, okay? It's really easy to use them improperly, but it's also really easy to communicate with a dog with one. I mean, like I said, I've given hundreds of dogs on this island alone off-leash freedom with an e-collar. And you can argue with me about whether dogs should be off-leash or not. I don't care because the dogs that I've trained at least are under control now. The people feel safe. The dogs are safe. They're not running off. They're not taking off into traffic. They're having a good time with their owners and they live a great life because of it. I mean, my guys have been on them for 5 years and they're doing just fine. So another good thing, this is kind of a more of a specific thing, but just to give you some perspective on it too, deaf dogs. So how else can you communicate to a deaf dog what you want them to do? So if the dog can't hear you and the dog isn't always going to have a leash on, you need physical communication, okay? And so the way an e-collar is used with the deaf dog a lot of times, and you could also replace deaf dog with a dog in prey drive because they're not going to hear you either, because instincts have kicked in and they are focused. And any other time a dog is, let's say, in an intense state of mind as well, they're probably not going to be listening to you either. You need that physical communication. So if you have a deaf dog and that dog, you need that dog's attention. Okay. If we train that dog to respond, if I let's say press down at a level 5 is the level they're working with, and that dog goes, oh, you want something from me? There you go. You have a communication setup. It doesn't matter if the dog's deaf or not. I don't care. I don't use my words a lot. I don't give a lot of commands when I train. I don't talk to dogs when I work. And I'm not doing this because I'm a jerk. I'm doing this because there's no reason for it. You see what I mean? But most people don't know how to use the other skills available to us, like our bodies, like the way to properly use a training tool, the way to properly use a leash, the way they don't understand the way that dogs perceive these things, you see? So we rely on our voice a lot, and then we rely on, let's say, overcompensating or undercompensating. So an e-collar allows us to be neutral 100% of the time. This means this, as long as this is what you've trained it for. So I really enjoy e-collars. Everybody I've worked with really enjoys e-collars. Doesn't matter what a Facebook meme has told you or what somebody in a dog group has told you about them. If they have had bad experiences with it, that is 100% on the person that showed them how to use it. Okay. Or maybe they didn't even learn how to go and use it. That's also why you should not just buy something off the shelf, watch a YouTube video and go, I can figure this out, because your dog is completely different. So I don't recommend that with almost anything. I recommend every single person who owns a dog in here, even if your dog walks well, go and hire a trainer for a session, learn how to walk a dog on a leash, learn how to use a leash, learn how to use the e-collar, learn how to do all of these things, because the more knowledge and education you have on it, the better you're going to be able to understand your dog in scenarios when you need to understand them. So if your dog is pulling, your dog is reacting, your dog is frustrated or biting at the leash or anything, any one of the above, overexcited, learn why they're doing this, learn how to properly walk a dog, learn how to properly use a leash, how to properly use an e-collar, and you're going to find yourself understanding your dog a lot better. Okay. So I think that's going to about wrap it up for me. And I'm just going to kind of talk about, I guess, just kind of, I don't know, put it all into conclusion, I suppose. So I primarily wanted to talk about the training tools for a reason, okay? That is because there's a lot of misunderstanding on the island in particular, but all over the world about them. And so unfortunately, I was not able to do this in person like I wanted to, but talking about it and just listening about it is still very important. And so I'm not trying to change anybody's mind on things, but I just wanted to share a little bit about how dogs understand pressure, how dogs understand these training tools, how they understand the leash, how they understand an e-collar, and why these things exist, and why we can actually use them to our benefit and for the benefit of the dog. So anything that is used with ill intention will become a negative thing, okay? And so if the person working with it has the best intentions and is willing to go at the pace of the dog, then everything else will start to come naturally. Your dog will stop pulling. They will start engaging with you. You will start getting a better walk, okay? But we have to go at the pace of the dog, and we have to find the tool that's right for your dog. So there's so many that are available to us, and I didn't even go into halty. I didn't get to go into martingales, which is similar to slip leashes or long lines or anything like that. But I just wanted to give some perspective and insight into why these things exist and why you should think about. Hold on one second. Sorry, dog was making noise on the bed. And why you should think about learning how to use these things and going past maybe that thing in the back of your head that says this is bad, okay, that this is wrong, that these things are going to hurt my dog, that these things are bad for my dog, okay? It's what you call propaganda and misinformation, all right? So if you don't want to, that's totally fine. But I would recommend learning from a professional. Just pick one and learn how to use it. Maybe you want to learn how to use a halty, okay? Go figure out how to use it. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Move on to the next thing. Your dog's not going to remember it. If you did not enjoy the experience with it, then that's fine. It's not for you. So when I work with people, the first thing I always ask them is, are you comfortable with this? And if they say no, then we just move on to the next thing. I'm not going to say, no, you have to use this. So when people are told, well, I have to use a harness on my dog, or I have to use a flat collar, or I have to use a prong collar, that is completely wrong. So as long as you understand how, let's say, physical pressure works, how to communicate with the dog, when to release pressure, when to add pressure, when to turn the dog's head around, how to understand opposition reflex, and how to use these tools to counteract it. So a prong collar is literally designed so that when a dog pulls, to move back. That's the whole point of it. So they can't go into that opposition. You see, same with the halty thing that wraps around a dog's nose. If they go to pull, their head gets turned to the side. Same with the front clip harness too, which I didn't really have the time to go into, but it's a similar concept. It was designed so that when pressure is applied and it tightens up here, to relieve it, the dog has to move to the side. So all of these things are designed to turn the head around. And the head holds the brain, which controls the rest of the body. You see, that's why I want control here, not on the body, not physically. You see, I want to control the way the dog is thinking, okay? Because if I can influence them to make the decision to move, then they're learning. But if I'm physically moving them every single time, questions are starting. Okay, cool. If I'm physically moving them every single time, they're not learning anything. And so I think that'll do it for me for this part. So yeah, please ask questions.
Morgan, do you want to go first?
And feel free to use a chat bar too if your microphone doesn't work as well. I think I can hopefully answer it just fine.
There's another one for you. Well, Morgan.
Okay. I'll try and make these quick, but right to the point. Okay. Because I do want to answer everybody's. How young can one start training a puppy? Well, it depends on what you want. So if you want your dog to walk better on a leash, then start training right away and do it inside of your house. Walk your dog around the house on your leash. So that's normally, if I have an 8-week-old puppy, I'll clip a leash on them, and whether it's on a harness or a flat collar, I don't care, and walk them around the house, teach them to follow you. Because 8-week-old puppy is going to follow you anyways, okay? You're their parent, so they're going to do that. So you might as well do it with a leash on. And that way they associate the leash with following you. You go outside, same thing. So you can start as soon as you get them. I mean, obviously not 5-6 weeks, but right away. What's your opinion on combining methods like prong and e-collar? So when it comes to prong and e-collar, to me, there's two conflicting things, okay? So the e-collar, it really just depends on what it is you're looking for, because the e-collar, through classical conditioning, you can condition it to be anything. I mean, it can even be positive reinforcement, where you click let's say the apply stimulation means come get a treat. And now when the dog feels it, ooh, I like that. So they come get a treat. So if you want to train recall, but you have a prong collar on the dog, those are two conflicting things. So your dog is going to want to stay near you because they're going to feel pressure when they go out, but the e-collar's on, telling them to come back, but then the dog won't leave your side. So to me, if I'm training recall, I want to encourage the dog to pull. Secondly, if I want to use it, let's say I have a dog that pulls too much or is too aggressive or intense, in that case, I might use both, because I need that extra bit of control. But honestly, I would separate the two, learn how to use one properly, okay? So if you need the e-collar and the prong collar to go for a walk, then you got to start your walk over, all right? So that's going to be my answer to that. And I got another one here, chest clip harnesses. Yeah, so front clips, I have a whole segment on that. I just wasn't sure if I was running out of time, but I will go over that actually right now briefly. So yeah, long-term damage, absolutely, but that's in extreme cases. I mean, that's if the dog is continuing to pull every day for their entire life, right? Like just wearing it alone will not cause the pressure to engage. And so the goal of a front clip harness, chest clip, easy walker, whatever you want to call it, is the same concept as a leash, except it does it here. So the goal is when a dog pulls on a chest clip harness, that it turns their body to the left or to the right. So that way, when they pull, it's uncomfortable. They pull to move away from the pressure, you see, or move towards it. I'm sorry. It's the same thing as I'm trying to teach as a flat collar. So if a dog pulls, all the easy walker is doing is the work for you. Now, what you give up with an easy walker is control over the head. So if you have a dog that's fixated, you could pull on them all you want, but they can still fixate. So for dogs with intensity, like overexcitement, reactivity, it's not recommended. But if you have just a normal, friendly little dog, then to me, it's not that big of a deal if you really don't need extreme control over that dog. But honestly, just learn how to use a collar properly. You're going to have a lot more control over that dog, because if you have a dog on an easy walker, let's say you ask the dog to sit, dog doesn't want to sit. What can you do? You're going to treat, come on, sit, sit, sit. Once again, you're hoping the dog does a behavior. And the last thing I'll say with an easy walker too is that it's really not teaching them much in the sense of like, if a dog is continuing to pull on an easy walker, they're not learning anything. Okay, you're just restraining at that point, and to some people that's totally fine, and all power to you if that is. But if they're still pulling, then they're not learning, so then there's no point. You have to change it up again. I hope that answers your question. Brachycephalic breed. I think I'm saying that right. So my mom has 2 French bulldogs. Okay. And so that has been my first experience with them. And obviously, yeah, you can't put most collars, and I'm not going to say this is all the time because there's a very big misunderstanding that you could never put a collar on a Frenchie. That is not true. Okay. But if that dog is pulling, for example, let's say you have a French bulldog with a flat nose, and it is pulling and choking. Well, they can't breathe properly anyway, so yes, it's not good. But the pressure itself is not necessarily, and this is, like I said, not the case for every dog. The pressure itself, let's say from a prong collar, is going to be a lot more gentle, therefore applying less overall. And it depends on the level of how extreme it is, right? I've worked with some pugs where literally like they cannot have anything on their neck. I've tried it. Let's say I put a slip leash on and gently pulled against it. It will not, it's too much for them. Their body cannot handle it. That's okay. All right. So then we put on something like an easy walker. But for the most part, with a dog that has, and I'm going to butcher this again, brachycephalic tendencies, to me, it's more what's up here. So if we're worried about the dog actually choking, well, then if the dog is choking, we have to stop the dog from choking. You see what I mean? So if we teach a dog, let's say a French bulldog, my mom's French bulldog, Olive wears a slip leash because we can have control up here, because right here is where dogs choke, and we do too. But right here, I can still breathe. So we're not applying pressure on anywhere that's going to affect the breathing. And then once again, with something like a prong collar on a dog like that, they're not even applying pressure at all. So a prong collar resting properly on a dog is just resting. You see, they could still breathe just fine. It's not going to choke them. And as I mentioned before, a prong collar is just those couple links expanding and contracting. So to me, it's actually better a lot of times because there's no pressure being applied on the dog and the dog is not pulling anymore. So I think Ashley Medeiros in here too can vouch for that as well. Anyways, I hope that answered your question with that. It's really a situational thing. Okay. It's kind of like an depends on the dog. It's hard to say that no dogs like pugs and Frenchies should ever wear collars, because that is wrong. All right. And so anybody who told you that is wrong. It's just a lot of people that don't understand how to use a collar and a leash properly. They see their dog choke and they go, whoa, I'm not doing that. No way. So that's my answer to that. Keep them coming.
Our last question, Brian, because you're past 7 o'clock here.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right.
I know, right?
Yes. What is it?
Oh, let's see. Does anybody have another question?
Oh, I thought somebody had one. No, sorry.
Yeah, I think that people have quite, I think the trouble too is finding the chat box sometimes.
Okay.
But
Well, I'll say, yeah, if I want to, you can give them a couple more minutes, or I guess
yeah.
7:05.
How about if we put your email address or
Yeah.
something in the chat box, and then people will
Yes,
just come up
that's
with
a good
questions.
idea.
and email you.
So I'll do let me make it capitalized so it's easier.
I think what was adorable was having the dogs walk around in the background. It was the happiest dogs I've seen in forever.
Yeah, they're a
I
little
think it was-
restless. They didn't get out as much as they normally do today because for obvious reasons. So, and they're also, like I said, they don't hang out in this room much. So they're just kind of checking. There's a lot of bones in here, so they're kind of scoping them out. But yeah. So I put my email on the bottom. It's dogtrainingwithbrian@gmail.com, and I could talk about this for hours, guys, and I'm glad you're here to stop me. But there's so much more information I wanted to go over with this, and I think that really the easiest way to understand it is just to see it in action. So find somebody who does use something like an e-collar, prong collar, slip leash, a halty, something you've never used before, even a harness. If you've never used a harness, ask them, is it working for you? Why is it working? Why is it not working? So, and it's okay to switch it up if something's not working. And so if you guys are interested in learning more, I would love to talk to you about it. I'd love to show you in person, send you videos, anything. My job is to educate, and that's what I want to do. So please reach out to me anytime. I don't care, anytime at all. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for today. So thank you guys for coming to this. I appreciate it. I hope I get to do many more of these and get better at them as I do it, and hopefully get to do some in person at some point. So I guess just keep your ears out for it. And
I know that raising behind you. Very cute. Oh
hey,
yeah,
guys, thank you so much.
you're very knowledgeable, and absolutely. Thank you very, very much, Brian.
I appreciate it, guys. Everybody take care. Have a good night. All right. Take care
You
of your
too.
dogs.
Thanks again, Brian. Oh, it's cute.
Bye.
Bye-bye.